Hello and welcome. Today, we'll be talking to you about a Neapolitan in Melbourne, the Giannini archive. But before I do so, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, the traditional owners of the land from which I speak. I extend my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Melbourne and beyond. Indigenous sovereignty has never been ceded. I would also like to say a couple of words to my Milan colleagues very briefly. Allora, ciao, grazie per il vostro sostegno, collaborazione, lavoro. È stato veramente incredibile, mi dispiace che non potevamo fare questo convegno a marzo, ma però sono contenta, dico grazie per la possibilità di fare ora tutto questo in rete. Okay, before I talk about a Neapolitan in Melbourne, I need to talk about a Milanese in Milan, Sabina Ciuffini. I met Sabina Ciuffini in 2014, and she is the granddaughter of Guglielmo Giannini, and it is thanks to her that we have this archive, that we've been able to build the archive, and that therefore we've been able to hold this conference. Sabina has been incredibly supportive and generous with her family holdings and with her family history, and I really thank her for her awareness of how important the singular figure Giannini is and for her generosity. Thank you, Sabina. Who is Guglielmo Giannini? In Australia, when I mention that I'm working on Giannini, there's not a lot of people who know who I'm talking about, and so my recap of who he is very general and meant for an international and Australian audience. Giannini was born in 1891 and he died in 1960. He was a journalist, he was a playwright, he was a theatre director, he was a film director, and of course he was a politician. Now, as a politician, he's most well known for the Fronte dell'Uomo Qualunque, which is a political party, the common man's party, that came to power in the first free elections in June 1946. And in those elections, this party that Giannini headed won 5.3% of the vote, and this placed it as the fifth strongest party in Italy at the time. What's remarkable about this is that Giannini was the third most popular politician in this election, coming in behind De Gasperi and Togliatti. So the Fronte dell'Uomo Qualunque came out of also his political journalism, founding the broadsheet in 1944 called Uomo Qualunque, Every Man or the Common Man. As a playwright, he was absolutely prolific. He wrote over 50 crime plays, thrillers. He apparently authored a novel every 2 weeks during the Second World War. He wrote 24 film scripts, he directed 4 feature films, and his achievements and range of engagement in theatre, in film, and also in politics is remarkable and phenomenal, and that is why we've built this archive, to make this visible and to draw attention to these achievements. Now, I've done a little bit of research of Giannini in Australia, and I've found that actually there's no real mention of him in the press or circulating until 1946. And in May 1946, there's an article which perhaps appropriately calls Giannini the mystery man. Giannini in this article is cited as saying, I'm a journalist, I'm a writer of plays and movie scripts. So we do get note of his engagement across the arts before he comes to politics. But what we also get note in this newspaper article is the fact that his mother's English. Now, so Giannini is bilingual, he's transnational in his outlook, and his mother is Mary Jackson. Now, Mary Jackson is the daughter of the philosopher and writer George W. Jackson. And Mary Jackson comes from a lineage, or Giannini does too, of people who are involved in the press and who voice their political views through the press. So George W. Jackson, his grandfather, is the son of another Mary Jackson, who is the daughter of William Pyne. William Pyne was known within England as, at the time, as a stern old liberal who held his own with the British government. He owned and ran the newspaper, the West of England Gazette, and was known to set his own typeset to ensure that his views were printed. Now, the father of William Pyne was also another William Pyne, who founded and ran the Bristol Gazette. So evidently, Giannini comes out of, on his English family side, a history of advocacy and work in the press. And in this first article in Australia, we see mention of George W. Jackson and these two books. So what are these books? Echoes from My Youth was published in 1864, and it contains a lot of poems, romantic poems about youth. It also, interestingly, contains poems about Garibaldi, which obviously was topical, and, you know, with the lines like, "Fair Italy is rising free." In addition to this poem, there's a poem called Italy Resurgent, which talks about Italy's sublime rebirth. So Giannini's grandfather was invested in contemporary European politics and wrote poetry about this, and he also, interestingly, wrote this book that was actually published after his death by his wife, called Man. And it covers a range of topics, and it's interesting in relation to things like mesmerism and things that don't concern us here, but specifically mentions the press and celebrates this and says it's an instrument of, you know, modernity in a way. It is something that comes on the heels of the railway. On one page, he talks about the railway solving the difficulty of distance and the telegraph removing the difficulty in communicating from the centre to the provinces, from London to the regions. So Jackson, Giannini's grandfather, was aware of the importance of the press and wrote about this. And I think this is particularly significant in relation to these books being cited as being in Giannini's library at home. Now, if we look at the press in England, it's quite different, of course. So we have mentioned by the 1930s of Giannini engaging in broadcast media and having his works broadcast in England. Now, the earliest mention I've seen is in the Times in the 30s, in the mid-30s. I've just briefly looked through these, and I think this is relevant and significant because Giannini was a man who, with his theatre, was already looking for foreign audiences and looking for transnational engagement. Now, in England, also in the archives and records there, we can see his capacity with English language. He was a friend of Sir Noel Charles, the British ambassador to Rome, and Sir Noel Charles wrote a personal letter in support of Giannini and advocating what a good character he has as a person and expressing his support for him. So I think these materials are quite interesting because, again, they highlight that Giannini, he was a politician, journalist, playwright, everything in Italy, but he also had strong ties to the UK. Now, in Australia, instead, the Department of Foreign Affairs in 1946 only mentions the Common Man Party, so highlights the emergence of this party. It mentions that Guglielmo Giannini has grown his support through his daily newspaper, Il Buon Senso, and his weekly L'Uomo Qualunque. And in addition to the Foreign Office just generally mentioning the emergence of Giannini's party, we then later get mention in the popular presses in Australia of the fact that Giannini is a man of the theatre. I like this one, Giannini, telling us how to say his name, talking about how he engages his audience through wit, how he can speak to a really broad audience and how good he is with his words and reaching out. Now, beyond this, we have a final a final article that I'll bring up, which shows a caricature of him where it says he's involved in thrillers and plays. Beyond this, there isn't a lot of material. There's very little, next to nothing in our National Library. There's no mention of his films, and this is why I think the archive is particularly significant, because it really draws attention to the range of his work. And so I'll show you here. You won't be able to see very clearly, but I encourage you to look into it, the range of materials we hold. Now, these include the materials we were so lucky to be given from Sabina, which are numerous typewritten and theatrical scripts, film subjects, screenplays, and to a lesser extent we have books, we have letters, we have manuscripts, and we have brochures. Our collections also includes reviews, manuscripts, and drawings. So we're really talking about a range of material, and they're drawn from across about almost 40 years of Giannini's life. Here you can see some political paraphernalia, and you can see that Giannini clearly kept record of what he was doing, and this could be business receipts, it can be minutes from meetings, it can be publications. So this is important. We can't take this for granted, I think, as well as the fact that we get personal letters. And what I really love are the manuscripts that are bound, that are dated with an address, and so care is taken with their preservation. There's an awareness, I think, of history and record keeping. And also we can see evidence of the attention paid as an editor to control his words, to control what's in his creative output. And it is really fascinating to look through different iterations of plays and to see evidence of this. Now, in addition to what the family holdings we have scanned, we also are fortunate to have works that Maria Pia Pagani has scanned from theatre journals, as well as photographic evidence of Giannini. This was enabled through her tremendous work and building a relationship with the Teatro Stabile di Torino. This in particular this relationship is thanks to the generosity of Dottoressa Anna Peyron, and we really appreciate being able to have the scanned works that have been published in journals, as well as obviously excerpts from newspapers, which often provide the only record we have of Giannini's prolific theatrical output, as well as record of the ways he was written about and celebrated when he died in 1960. In addition to the wonderful work of Maria Pia Pagani, we have the work of Cristina Formenti, who has been really active and wonderful in scanning and bringing together all the existent copies of Kines. We for the first time, these have been brought together. And this is a film publication, magazine, or paper really, that Giannini founded and was editor and director of until 1932. So from 1919 to 32, we hold the most complete collection of this. And it is a wonderful way to see the ways that Giannini thought of the relationship between the arts, and it is also evidence of the language that is being used to describe and talk about the cinema, as well as, again, here we see, Giannini's own contributions, his social commentary through Le Vespe. In addition, there's also Cinema Star related publication, and we have the existing copies of this. So thank you, Christina. That was a tremendous amount of work. We've got over 2,000 documents there, and it's a great resource in allowing us to look comparatively and also within the context of what is going on in the film industry in Italy during these decades. Clearly, our conference didn't emerge out of the blue, even though the background here is blue. Anyway, so I would like to thank the Università degli Studi di Milano, particularly for this initial workshop as well. This workshop was undertaken in 2017, and it was the first time we really used the resources in our archive to build a platform and to start to speak about Giannini's significant work in the theatre and in cinema. I need to particularly thank Raffaele Di Berti and Gabriele Cambiaghi for facilitating this, and again Sabina Ciuffini for attending and being a supportive part of this important process of looking back on her grandfather's work. From this first workshop, we published a mini dossier in bianco e nero, and this is the first iteration of the publications that we will be undertaking around this archive, and I really look forward to drawing and growing this body of important work. And I would really want to thank a host of people. I need to, above all, thank Università degli Studi di Milano. This has been and is a wonderful institutional partner. The university was going to host the conference in March, but we're unable to do this, so I thank you for being so adept in moving to this online iteration. You've been a brilliant institution to work with, and I am, really grateful for our ongoing work. Teatro Stabile di Torino, thank you also for the institutional support. It is wonderful to be able to join theatre archives to film and political archives, and really significant that we can talk between disciplines. I will begin also in Melbourne by thanking Michelle Watson, Bernadette Horton, Hasitha Valalaj of Deakin Library Library Research Systems. The Deakin Library Research Systems group, this group in particular, has been absolutely fundamental to my ability to build the Amica archive, to organise and collect materials, and now to make videos and materials accessible and visible online. Their expertise is phenomenal. They always problem solve in a really proactive and helpful way. And like any historical researcher, I just couldn't work without this kind of support. So I really extend a heartfelt thanks. Sean Redmond, who put me in contact to Eleonora Sparagna, is a brilliant colleague, and I thank him for this generosity in doing this when I joined Deakin in 2014. And also Deb Verhoeven, who helped me acquire grants and travel to Milan in those first years when I started to scan. Her support in my application for a central research grant was really important, and I thank the Faculty of Arts and Education at Deakin University for providing a significant contribution which allowed us to build this archive. In Italy, of course, Sabina Ciuffini, I've mentioned her again and again, and she needs to be cited. Her support has been tremendous. We wouldn't be where we are without her, and I just really appreciate her full-sightedness in understanding and appreciating how important it is to make available historical documents to researchers and scholars so that we can return to history and look at it possibly differently and afresh and anew. The conference committee has been brilliant, of course. We couldn't do anything without them. They are, the team. We come from a range of disciplines, from film, from theatre, from politics, from journalism. There's a range of expertise, and there really is a team working across disciplines, and this is a wonderful achievement, and I thank you all. Raffaele Di Berti, Gabriele Cambiaghi, Stefano Locatelli, Elena Mosconi, Irene Piazzoni, Daniele Saracella, and Paolo Giannini. Thank you. Non so cosa dire. Okay, research and administrative assistants, we can't do anything without them, and really they've been tremendous. So Annalisa Caffa, in the first years in Milan when I was scanning, was really was an absolute support to me and helped me get my work done. Cristina Formenti, with her work with Kines and Cinema Star, and we'll be hearing her talk during this conference, has been brilliant. Thank you, Cristina. Maria Pia Pagani, wonderful collaborator and researcher and facilitator in terms of giving us access to theatre archives. Jacopo Bondini, has been brilliant this year. He's a kind of relatively new arrival in our team and has done a tremendous amount of work in visualising the conference and in enabling the conference. So thank you, Jacopo. Now, last but not least, of course, are our keynote speakers, Giovanni Orsina, Franco Perelli, and Giampiero Brunetta. I can't thank you enough. You three come from different disciplines. You are here together in the conference talking about the same figure, talking differently about the same figure. And your expertise and your commitment to this project is really appreciated. And I really respect the fact that, you know, we had to suddenly move to this online forum, and you've been engaged and committed, and you've uploaded your works, and you've really presented some fascinating research. So thank you very much. Also to all the other contributors, we wouldn't have a conference without you, so thank you. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all online. I'm sorry we're doing this you know, remotely at a distance, but I'm thankful that Zoom allows us to do this, and I think, again, possibly Giannini would find this perfectly appropriate. Allora, grazie e ci vediamo virtualmente presto. Ciao!